Respect isn't owed by age or uniform. It's earned in silence when no one's watching. What would you do if someone humiliated a veteran right in front of you, and then the entire room found out who he truly was? Let us know in the comments section below, and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss stories that honor those who've served. He hated the waiting most of all. Not the slowness, not the paperwork, not even the bruising looks people gave when they saw the tremor in his left hand. It was the waiting. Larry Cowan, 68, Marine Recon, Silver Star recipient, father of 3 and grandfather of 2, stood near the back of the DMV line in Briarwood County, his knees stiff, his patience thinner than he let on. His jacket, plain green with a tiny sun-bleached eagle globe and anchor stitched near the collar, didn't scream military. Neither did his faded jeans or the orthopedic shoes he now needed after 2 surgeries on his left knee. But the way he stood, feet planted, eyes calm, body angled slightly to keep his 6 o'clock covered, that was all habit, unshakable, ingrained. The woman behind the glass at window 4 hadn't looked up once since he got in line. She was too busy chewing her gum like it owed her money. Carla Monroe. The name tag might as well have read Gatekeeper of Misery. Her reputation preceded her: sharp tongue, 0 patience, and an uncanny ability to find a reason to deny even the most basic forms. "Next!" she barked, not even bothering to make eye contact. Larry took a small step forward, winced, and kept going. 3 spots ahead, a teenager was trying to pay for a license renewal in coins. The clinking of nickels and dimes echoed through the tiled room, and someone in the back muttered, "Unbelievable." He waited. Steady. "You ever notice how these old guys always look like they're lost?" came a voice from the row of plastic chairs. A young man in his 20s, hair buzzed on the sides but thick on top, smirked as he elbowed his friend. Yeah," the other snorted. "Bet he doesn't even know what line he's in. Probably here to apply for a library card or something." A few chuckled. Not loudly, just enough for the words to slither into Larry's ears. He didn't flinch, didn't turn, didn't speak. They weren't the first punks to mouth off at him, probably wouldn't be the last. A woman 2 seats down gave the guys a side eye but said nothing. Most people didn't anymore. It was easier to stay quiet than stand up. "Next." Carla's voice cracked through the room again. Larry stepped forward. Another shuffle of progress. The young man who'd cracked the joke leaned forward and stage whispered, "Careful, Grandpa. They might ask you what century you were born in." His buddy wheezed with laughter. "Better check if he brought a horse and buggy." Larry's hand twitched. It wasn't the Parkinson's this time. It was memory. The kind of memory that roared to life when arrogance and ignorance rubbed shoulders too loudly. That time in Fallujah when a 19-year-old kid had mouthed off about how easy their mission would be. He'd looked just like these boys. Cocky, unbloodied. Seconds before the first IED changed the shape of that kid's whole life. Larry exhaled, slowly. Counted. 1, 2, 3. Back to now. He looked down at the manila folder in his hands. Inside, tucked between his birth certificate and an old utility bill, was a letter from the VA, a copy of his discharge papers, and one item he'd never thought he'd need to bring anywhere again: a medal case. Not for show, glorification. He hadn't planned on anyone seeing it. He didn't want respect. He wanted a renewed license and to be left alone. That's finally his turn. Carla didn't even glance up as he stepped forward. "Form and ID." Larry handed them over. Carla scanned them, sighed like he'd personally offended her, and tapped her keyboard with the enthusiasm of a bored woodpecker. "You're missing a signature on the address confirmation." He leaned slightly forward. "I signed it. Bottom of the page." She scowled, looked again. "Oh, whatever. It's messy." He didn't answer. She squinted at his military discharge form. "Your vet?" He nodded once. Carla clicked her tongue. "We get a lot of people trying to use old service stuff to skip lines or get a discount. That won't work here." Larry's face didn't change, but his knuckles tightened around the folder. "No one's asking for a discount," he said quietly. "Yeah, well, I just need to verify it, otherwise this won't—" A sharp clink hit the floor. The room went silent. It had fallen from the folder when she handed it back, his silver star medal. The case had opened slightly on impact, revealing the medal's sheen in the harsh fluorescent light. Carla froze. The teens in the chairs didn't laugh. He didn't move. No one did. The room, which had been a dull hum of bureaucracy and boredom, now pulsed with a different kind of weight, a different kind of silence. Larry bent down slowly, picked up the case, and closed it gently, and straightened back up with the same quiet strength that had carried him through 3 tours, 2 surgeries, and 1 lifetime of being underestimated. And only then, did he finally turn to face the room. Not angry, not smug. Calm, the kind of calm that made people shift in their seats, the kind of calm that came from surviving things others couldn't even pronounce, the kind of calm that said, "You have no idea who you're looking at." And they didn't, but they were about to find out. Larry didn't speak. He didn't need to. His silence now carried more weight than any words those boys could have thrown at him. He tucked the medal back into the folder and clasped it under one arm. Carla, suddenly realizing everyone was staring not at Larry, but at her, shifted uncomfortably behind the glass. "Hurry, I'll process this," she muttered, eyes fixed on her screen. Larry didn't acknowledge her. He turned to walk toward the fingerprint booth, each step slow but unshaken. The room was quiet, the kind of quiet that didn't come from peace, but from the echo of shame. The laughter that had once danced between the chairs was gone, burned away by something much heavier. But not everyone was sitting still. From the row near the exit, a man in a plain hoodie stood up, mid-30s, clean-cut, arms crossed over his chest. His eyes hadn't left Larry since the medal hit the floor. His name was Logan Trent. No one knew it yet, but he'd served 12 years in naval special warfare, 3 tours in Afghanistan, 2 in Iraq. He stepped forward without a word. Next to him, another man rose, then another, and another. 6 men in total, scattered around the room like puzzle pieces that had been waiting to snap into place. They didn't wear uniforms. They didn't need to. Their posture spoke louder than any name tag ever could. These weren't just bystanders. These were veterans. Brothers in silence. They moved like a unit, slowly, deliberately, until they formed a loose arc behind Larry. He didn't turn, not yet. Carla noticed the movement and finally looked up. The sight of 6 men standing in what could only be described as formation startled her. She blinked, eyes darting between them, and then to the teenagers who now looked like kids caught with fireworks in church. "What is this?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. No one answered. Larry paused at the booth, exhaled, and turned around. The veterans weren't facing him. They were facing the room. One of the teens, the one with the styled hair and the loud mouth, started to speak. "Hey, we didn't mean anything. We were just—" Logan held up a hand. Not in anger, not in aggression. Just a hand. It was enough to shut the kid up. Larry finally spoke. His voice was rough, not from age, but from disuse. "I came here to renew a license. That's it." He looked down at the folder, thumb brushing the edge of the medal case. Then, louder, but still calm, "I didn't bring this to prove anything. I don't carry it because I want respect from strangers. I carry it because the world forgets too easily, and sometimes—" He looked directly at Carla. "Sometimes people need reminding." Carla shifted, face pale. "I didn't mean—" "Steiner," he interrupted, "you rarely do." He turned again and stepped into the fingerprint booth. The scanner blinked blue. One by one, the veterans behind him took a step back. They weren't there for a show. They were there for a statement. Not to intimidate, but to affirm. That silence has its own kind of salute. The oldest among them, a heavy-set man with salt and pepper stubble, finally spoke. "Semper Fi, Sergeant Cowens." Larry paused again, looked over his shoulder. "You too, Gunny?" No more words needed. Called to fumble with the forms behind her screen, clicking through tabs with nervous fingers. She was trying to hurry now, the weight of the room pressing against her spine. The teens who had mocked Larry were still frozen, unable to meet anyone's gaze. And then a child, no more than 8, tugged on his mother's coat near the front. "Mommy," he whispered. "Is he a hero?" The woman, early 30s, teacher's badge, still clipped to her lanyard, nodded. "Yes, baby, he is." Larry didn't hear it, but others did. The words traveled soft as wind from row to row, until the room felt heavier than any DMV ever should. A few moments later, the scanner chirped. Larry stepped out of the booth. The line hadn't moved. No one had told it to. He walked slowly toward the chairs, toward the door. Every step felt like 1,000 others he'd taken, in silence, over gravel, through sand, across tarmac that radiated heat like anger. But this time, it was different. These weren't battlefields. These were bureaucrats. And still, some fights followed you home. Logan stepped aside to let him pass, offering the smallest nod. Larry returned it. As he reached the door, someone opened it for him. Not an employee, just a young man, early 20s, who had watched everything from the front row, the same one who hadn't laughed, the only one who had looked sick when the others did. "Thank you, sir," the kid said, voice barely audible. Larry didn't say a word, but he did something more powerful. He reached out and gently placed his hand on the kid's shoulder. Just for a second. Then he walked out. The DMV remained silent. The scanner beeped again, signaling the next customer. But no one moved. Because now the room wasn't waiting for a number. They were all still trying to understand the weight of what they'd just seen. The next morning, Larry Cowan stood in his kitchen, staring into a coffee mug he hadn't yet filled. The sun sliced through the blinds, drawing long lines across the cluttered table. Half-read VA letters, a medical bill he hadn't opened yet, a birthday card from his youngest granddaughter with a shaky crayon drawing of him wearing his Marine uniform and a crown. He traced the crown with his fingertip and smiled. It was the first time since yesterday's DMV incident that his shoulders felt lighter. He hadn't expected what happened. The metal falling, the room freezing, those 6 men standing. He didn't need that. He didn't want a scene. He only wanted to be seen. Just once. Not as a burden, not as a number in the system, but as a man who had lived a life worth something. His phone buzzed on the counter. A text. "Ethan, you coming to the ceremony today?" Larry's thumb hovered over the screen. He'd forgotten. His son Ethan, a recent graduate from Briarwood Law School, had invited him weeks ago to attend the small community recognition event for families of graduating veterans. It wasn't a military function, just a quiet afternoon ceremony where families could say a few words if they wanted. But Larry had brushed it off. He hated public things. He hated applause that felt forced. He had told Ethan, "Don't make a big deal out of me. This is your day." But now, after what happened at the DMV, it didn't feel like such a bad idea to be present. "Larry, I'll be there. Might be a few minutes late." He set the phone down, filled his cup, and took a long sip. By noon, the Briarwood Community Auditorium buzzed with quiet energy. Fold-out chairs lined the tiled floor. White banners with navy trim flapped lightly near the stage, and a modest American flag stood beside a podium made of polished wood. Families chatted, students hugged professors, and parents took photos under the glow of ceiling lights that made everything feel both important and too bright. Ethan stood off to the side of the stage, checking his tie in the reflection of a nearby glass case. He had always been a calm presence even as a kid, but today he couldn't stop adjusting his sleeves, running a hand over his neatly parted hair, pacing slightly. His wife, Madison, leaned in. "Relax. He's coming. You said he texted you." "I know," Ethan said, but his voice held that tension, the kind that builds from hope, rubbing too close to disappointment. "He's not late yet," she added. Ethan gave a tight nod. "I just don't want him to think this is about putting him on display. I know he doesn't like that." Madison smiled gently. "Then make it about gratitude, about recognition, the kind he never got properly." Ethan looked toward the back of the room, scanning faces. Still no sign of him. People began taking their seats. The MC, a thin man in his 50s wearing a tan suit and a clip-on mic, stepped to the podium and tapped the microphone twice. "Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Briarwood's annual Family Recognition Day. Today we celebrate not just our students, but those who walked alongside them, supported them, and sometimes carried more than their share of the weight, so that our veterans could walk this stage with pride." Applause followed, polite and warm. Larry stepped into the back of the room right as the clapping began. He wore the same green jacket, jeans, and orthopedic shoes from yesterday, but today the medal case stayed home. He didn't need it. He spotted Ethan near the stage and gave a small nod. Ethan's shoulders dropped in relief. He was here. Larry took a seat in the back row. No one noticed. As the ceremony went on, students were called up one by one, each greeted with small applause and a handshake from the dean. A few paused to say brief words of thanks, many to their spouses, a few to their kids. One woman, a former Navy corpsman, saluted the crowd with tears in her eyes, after dedicating her diploma to a fallen teammate. Then Ethan's name was called. He took the stage, tall and composed, but there was a tightness in his voice as he spoke. "I want to thank my professors, my wife, Madison, and the guys in my cohort, but today I need to recognize someone who's sitting in the back, probably pretending he doesn't hear this." Soft laughter rose. Larry looked down, his jaw tightening slightly. "My dad, Larry Cowan, served 3 combat tours with the Marine Corps. He's the reason I know what real strength looks like. Not because of the medals, not even because of what he did over there." Ethan paused, "but because of what he's done since." The room quieted. "Most people don't know what it means to carry something invisible. My dad does, every day. And still, he shows up, for his family, for his grandkids, for people who don't even deserve it." Larry looked up. Ethan's voice didn't "I've watched him stand still while the world moved past him. I've watched him get treated like a number, but I've also watched him give respect where he wasn't given any. I think we can learn something from that. I know I did." A single clap broke the silence, and another, and in the room, slowly, like rising tide, stood in quiet applause. Not the raucous kind, the reverent kind. Ethan didn't wait for it to fade. He stepped off the stage and walked directly to the back. To the man in the green jacket. He knelt beside his father, the crowd still standing. "Thanks for coming, Dad." Larry didn't speak, but he reached up, squeezed his son's shoulder, and in that squeeze gave him everything he didn't know how to say. When the applause finally faded, Larry stood slowly. His knees didn't want to cooperate, but they never did anymore. Not since that night in Anbar Province when the explosion took out the vehicle he was supposed to be in. He hadn't moved fast enough that day. Someone else did. Sometimes that memory caught up with him in his dreams, sometimes in the morning when the stiffness was worse than usual. But today, as Ethan placed a hand under his arm to steady him, it didn't matter. They walked out together, not saying much, not needing to. Madison caught up with them in the hallway, eyes shining. "He's still got his speech notes in his jacket," she whispered to Larry with a grin. "But I guess he didn't need 'em." Larry gave a soft laugh. Kid always did better off script. Outside, the June afternoon had a forgiving breeze that tugged gently at Larry's jacket. A few families were gathered near the stairs, taking photos, laughing, balancing cups of lemonade in flimsy paper cups. There was life out here, unapologetic and easy. But before Larry could take another step, a voice called from behind. "Mr. Cowens?" He turned. It was the MC, the man with the clip-on mic in the tan suit. But he wasn't smiling like before. Not nervous, not stiff. This was something different. "Sir, I wanted to thank you," he said, stepping closer, lowering his voice like it was something sacred. "I was at the DMV yesterday. I saw what happened." Larry blinked. For a moment, he didn't know what to say. "I was just renewing a registration," the man continued. "I didn't speak up. I should have. But when you didn't say anything, and then the metal dropped. I've never felt a room change like that." Larry looked at him evenly. "It wasn't about the metal." "I know," the man nodded. "That's what made it powerful." The two men stood quietly for a moment, just the breeze between them. "I wanted to shake your hand then," he said, holding it out now. "I'd like to do it properly." Larry accepted the handshake, firm and steady. A few others nearby watched, and, like before, at the DMV in the auditorium, something shifted again. The moment expanded, quiet but contagious. A woman in a blue dress stepped forward. "That was you?" she asked, gently. "I was there too. I've been thinking about that moment ever since." A young man in a Briarwood ROTC sweatshirt added, "My little brother was one of the kids who laughed. He told me what you said after, that it wasn't about earning respect, but about reminding people. He said he couldn't stop thinking about it." Larry felt his chest tighten in a way that surprised him. He had said those words without thinking, without plan. Now they were echoing in people he didn't even know. Another woman approached, then a young couple. One by one. Not a crowd, not a mob, just a ripple of recognition. Strangers offering nods, handshakes, a simple thank you. Ethan stepped back a few paces, watching it all unfold. He wasn't surprised. He knew this was who his father was. Quietly unforgettable. The kind of man who never asked for respect but created it wherever he walked. Eventually, the group thinned. The ceremony was over, but something else was beginning. As Larry turned to leave, he saw one more familiar face near the parking lot. Logan Trent, the man from the DMV. He hadn't spoken that day, but Larry remembered his eyes, that stillness, that understanding only another veteran could carry. Logan approached and gave a simple nod. "Didn't want to say anything yesterday, just wanted to be there." "You were," Larry said. "That's what mattered." Logan held out a small card. "I run a non-profit just across town. We help veterans transitioning out. Housing, job placement, mental health services. We've got a mentorship program, too, for guys coming back and wondering where they fit." Larry looked down at the card. "You ever want to talk to some of the younger ones? You know, about what happens when the uniform's gone, but the fight's still in you? They'd listen." Larry nodded slowly. "I might take you up on that. We could use a guy like you." They shook hands. Nothing dramatic. Just something real. As Logan walked off, Larry turned back to Ethan, who was waiting by the car. "Ever tell you about Sergeant Milner?" Larry asked. Ethan raised an eyebrow. "No. Who's that?" "Guy in my unit. Best story I ever heard about a mess hall incident and a live chicken." Ethan laughed. "Okay. That's a new one." Larry smiled, really smiled. "Remind me to tell it sometime. The real version, not the one we made up for the officers." They got in the car. As they pulled out of the parking lot, Larry looked once more in the rearview mirror. The flag near the auditorium waved slowly in the wind. A few students were still standing around, laughing about summer plans, careers, the future. For once, Larry didn't feel behind them. He didn't feel like a man whose stories were locked in the past. He felt, finally, like part of what came next. Later that evening, Ethan posted a photo to social media. It was a candid shot Madison had taken from the back of the auditorium, Larry standing while the room applauded. The caption read, You don't need to wear your legacy on your chest for people to feel it. Sometimes, all it takes is standing quietly in the right place. Within hours, the post gained traction, shared by local veterans groups, picked up by a regional newspaper. Messages poured in from strangers thanking Larry for what he represented: dignity without noise, courage without spectacle. But Larry didn't notice the likes or shares. He was sitting in his living room with his granddaughter on his lap, teaching her how to fold a paper aeroplane. Her little fingers fumbled with the edges, giggling as they bent the wings unevenly. "Like this?" he said gently, guiding her hands. "Will it fly?" she asked, hopeful. He looked down at the lopsided paper, the crumpled nose, the crooked wings, and he smiled. "Better than you think,"